U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
The Philippines is accusing China of piracy after China rammed Philippine vessels on a resupply mission in disputed waters off the South China Sea.
Singapore just concluded its flagship annual Shangri-La Dialogue Security Summit. Officials from all over the world engaged in discussions on regional peace and security. The biggest takeaway from the summit was the interaction between the United States and China. Top defense officials from both sides met to discuss regional partnerships and cooperation mechanisms. All this was highlighted by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's statement.
War or a fight with China is neither imminent, in my view, or unavoidable. So, leaders of great power nations need to continue to work together to ensure that we're doing things to reduce the opportunities for miscalculation and misunderstandings.
This is the most precise assessment of the probability of war between the two superpowers.
The rising tensions between the world's two most powerful countries, the United States and China, after several military close calls. In the most recent incident, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says a Chinese warship came within 150 yards of an American destroyer above the Taiwan Strait.
Since the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the emergence of a more assertive China under Xi Jinping, Beijing has undeniably become Washington's primary rival. Both nations seek to achieve great power status on their own terms. Interactions between these two powers are closely monitored, as any potential conflict carries significant global implications. However, through diplomacy and mutual understanding, there remains hope for maintaining peace and stability, preventing any escalation towards conflict. But how likely is a war between the two? And if that were to happen, what type of scenario would spark an escalation? Join us as we provide detailed insight into how a conflict between the US and China might unfold. A future outbreak of Sino-American conflict could potentially involve a variety of scenarios, each with unique implications and outcomes. Taiwan is the primary point of contention between the United States and China. China asserts that Taiwan is an integral part of its territory, while Taiwan maintains its stance of independence. Any violent conflict could potentially involve the United States, which has pledged to protect Taiwan's sovereignty. The probability of war over Taiwan appears to be increasing. Recently, Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun delivered a fiery speech at the Shangri-La Forum, declaring that China's military is prepared to forcefully prevent Taiwan's independence. A war could play out at various levels of conflict, such as sea blockades, missile strikes, naval bombardments, and electronic information offensives, as well as a D-Day-style beach landing and airborne Special Operations Forces invasion of the island. One may not label Sino-Japanese relations as outright hostile, but they are indeed contentious. An armed conflict between Japan and China could be sparked either by a preemptive attack by China against U.S. airbases on Japanese soil, or by a Chinese invasion on Japanese islands just northwest of Japan. Japan would likely feel obligated to respond to an affront to their sovereignty. The United States would in turn be drawn in to support Japan's self-defense forces and territorial integrity. The U.S. and Japan have participated in various joint military drills over the years to deter China from potential adventurism. In case of a war with China over Japan, the primary contest would be the control of key air bases like Okinawa and maritime choke points, and would likely be a precursor to a Chinese move on Taiwan. Possibly the most unpredictable point of contention to spark a conflict could be related to the dynamics on the Korean peninsula. North Korea could attack South Korea, which would likely bring China into the conflict. Given China's interest in border stability with North Korea, China would probably choose to intervene in a conflict just like they did towards the end of the Korean War in the 1950s. This would lead to South Korea requesting additional U.S. assistance beyond what the Mutual Defense Treaty outlines. The war theater involving these states might feature the primary objective of U.S. and South Korean forces moving quickly to secure North Korean ballistic missile launch sites and nuclear weapons early in the conflict. South Korea's capital city, Seoul, is within striking distance of mere artillery fire. The United States has no territorial claims over the South China Sea, but as an ally of the Philippines, its interests clash with those of China. Any escalation of armed conflict in the South China Sea or the waterways connecting the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean would likely draw in U.S. air and naval forces to prevent PLA dominance of the operational space. Should conflict erupt in the South China Sea, China and the United States would be operating at the very edge of their capabilities. As opposed to other flashpoints, like Taiwan, where China has the benefit of operating close to home, their benefit would be muffled if fighting were to ensue close to the Philippines. This is because of the large presence of U.S. military installations within the country. In case of war, the conflict would necessarily spread to land after several clashes over the South China Sea on water. The theater would feature land-based air and missile defense and strikes, special operations forces, and forced entry ground maneuver capabilities. India is rapidly becoming a key U.S. ally in the region. Both nations engage in extensive defense and security cooperation, although no formal mutual defense agreement has been signed. A conflict between China and India could spark over disputed border regions. In the event of an India-China conflict, while the United States may not be directly involved, it could extend political and economic support to India to prevent China from gaining the upper hand. The United States might also provide New Delhi with intelligence and military equipment. Such support could lead China to view the support as an act of a belligerent party, and, as a result, military leadership may feel it necessary to take preemptive action against the United States, escalating to a direct confrontation. Both China and the United States are fully capable of launching cyberspace attacks. Resorting to cyber warfare would likely only happen when the broader armed conflict was imminent or in full swing. If a cyberspace war were to ensue, both sides would suffer large-scale network disruptions, causing shocks to economic markets and trade. What would operations look like in a hot war between China and the US? This is arguably the most crucial question, and yet it remains without a definitive answer. Given Chinese influence and the built-in advantage of engaging in a military conflict so close to home, the United States will have to mobilize forces and capabilities for a diverse range of operations. The U.S. will likely expand, or at the very least, continue to maintain its bases and military defense agreements closer to potential conflict zones. The United States can gain the upper hand if it manages to neutralize Chinese computer networks and space-based capabilities early on. Both states might also carry long-range precision strikes against command and control and targeting facilities on each other's bases or mainland. Short of a nuclear exchange, and second to loss of life, the greatest damage from any conflict between China and the US is on the economic front. Both states realize that large-scale military action would harm their financial interests. A glimpse of such a conflict could be seen on a very minor scale in 2018 to 2019. The US imposed tariffs on about $350 billion worth of Chinese imports, and China retaliated by levying tariffs on an additional $100 billion worth of imports. Despite an agreement in January 2020 to halt further tariff hikes, existing ones remain. The scale of this trade dispute is substantial. U.S. tariffs affected around 18% of its imports, equivalent to 2.6% of its GDP, while China's retaliation impacted 11% of its imports, equivalent to 3.6% of its GDP. Based on these stats, the U.S. might gain the upper hand in a protracted economic war, as it controls global financial institutions and has alliances with leading economies. Despite all this, realistically, any Sino-American war will have a devastating impact on the global economy. Both China's and the United States economies are ingrained in worldwide trade and finance. Massive trade disruptions would occur in case of war between them, leading to the collapse of many already struggling economies worldwide. It would likely lead to a global contraction much worse than anything we have seen in recent history. The rivalry between the United States and China will continue growing as both nations engage in economic, strategic, and diplomatic competition. Their differing views on international politics make finding common ground challenging. Despite this, it is crucial to recognize that any potential conflict between China and the United States would lead to mad, mutually assured destruction, highlighting the importance of diplomacy and dialogue in preventing such an outcome. Perhaps the same reason we are concerned about a hot conflict between the two countries is also why we can have confidence that war is not imminent. Do you think a direct US-China conflict is likely? Tell us in the comments and keep following Out There International for insightful analysis of key international issues.